Here's what we'll be watching for in the first month of the regular season. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. This is Tyler Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. It's Locked On MLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And as always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. So today we're going to go over some of the biggest storylines we're keeping an eye on during the first month of the regular season for the Mariners. And let's start with the man who's on your t-shirt there, Colby, Julio Rodriguez. And we talked about this a little bit during our outfield preview. With Julio, we would like to see him get off to a faster start than he has in 2 of the 3 first months that he's had in his career. We all remember that April in 2022, his rookie year. He was abysmal that month. This past first month in 2024 was a little bit better, but it was an 81 WRC plus. He did hit for a high average, but he wasn't hitting for really any power to speak of. He was mostly a singles guy, which is not who you want Julio to be. But in 2023, he had like a 109 WRC plus. I mean, I'd take that. What would constitute as a successful first month of the year for Julio for you?
I think, statistically, I don't know if it really, obviously you want to get off to a good start statistically, but I think more than that is you want to see Julio do what he did last year, which is at the end of last year, rather, that is get to your pull side. And that is where the home runs are going to come. You want to see him hit more doubles. You want to see him hit more home runs. And it probably starts with doing damage on the fastball in the inner third. In the first half of last year, he really would just kind of slap that pitch the other way, inside out swing, and flare a single into right. When he really needs to, turn on that ball and hit a line drive down the left field line or hit a home run into the left center field to the foul pole somewhere in that area. And he did that at the end of last year. Obviously, you still want him to hit mistakes. It'd be great if his walk rate could go up a little bit closer to league average. It'd be great if he could stop chasing that slider low and away. But I think, what you're really looking for early out of Julio is kind of what we've seen this spring. Hammer the mistake pitches, stay within yourself. You don't have to swing harder or anything like that. Just do damage on the pitches you're supposed to do damage on. And, if you get the good slider on the outside corner and all you can do with that is just kind of, hit it into right field or do that. Like, you don't have to try and crush every single pitch unless it's a pitch that you can crush. So I really do think it's a approach thing. It's a game plan thing, more so than statistics. And we need to remember that, the Mariners play a good chunk of their games in April at T-Mobile Park. That's not always conducive to power numbers under the best of circumstances, but in April and like March and April, it's even harder to hit in that ballpark. Right. So, I think the statistics will take care of themselves. Julio certainly can hit the ball hard, and obviously he can slice that ball through the marine layer. The numbers may not look exactly how you want him to, but if he is, driving the ball with some authority to the pole side, then I think he's probably pretty well locked in, and we've seen him do that this spring so far. A lot of hard hit balls for Julio. The numbers aren't amazing there. The slugging is, but like if he did that, like at the batting average and the on base are a little bit down, but the slugging is up in the first month, I think that'd be a really good sign. Of course, if he just wants to hit 270, 340, 500, like in the first month, that would be great too.
Yeah, I've been encouraged by what we've seen so far this spring. When he's hitting the ball to the opposite field, he's finding the right center field gap. Mm-hmm. And when he's pulling the ball, I think about that double that he hit against the Cubs about a week or so ago, where he just kind of pulled a breaking ball out of the bottom of the zone down the line, was able to get 2 bags out of it. Like, that's what I want to see out of Julio more. And that kind of just, that feels like a testament to the the lightening of his load, if you will, that Egger kind of brought towards the end of last year, and now, you know, is being re-emphasized by Kevin Seitzer, as well as, you know, still Edgar, right, who's overseeing the whole thing. It just seems like Julio's in a better place mentally, and hopefully he's able to carry over that success that we saw at the end of last year and what we've seen so far this spring into the regular season, into the start of the regular season. Because I mean, if Julio could get off to a hot start, like let's say like Julio's like a 120 WRC plus bat in the first month of the season, you should be able to win quite a few ball games in the first month and start to create a little bit of a buffer there for you as you get deeper into the season. So let's talk a little bit about DH. What are they going to do at DH, Colby? I know you really want them to give as many opportunities as possible to Mitch Garver, but there's still the question about whether or not Mitch Haniger is going to be on this roster. He's still dealing with the shoulder discomfort. He was on 710 yesterday. I haven't had a chance to listen to that interview, so I don't know if they asked him about his health, but he hasn't played in a game since March 8th, and he's not in the lineup today. Feels like they need to make a determination on if he's going to be able to go for the start of the regular season within the next day or two. And then obviously Rowdy Tellez has this deadline coming up on Sunday for him to potentially opt out of his minor league contract. So they do have the open 40-man roster spot. If they do put him on the 40-man roster, that would include a $1.5 million kicker for him, which to me would seem to all but guarantee his spot on the opening day roster and probably confirm what they're going to do with Haniger, whether it's placing him on the IL or DFAing him. So how do you think this is going to shake out in the first month?
Poorly. If the game plan is just to give Rowdy Tellez all the at-bats against right-handed pitching at the DH spot, I think you're doing a major disservice to your ball club and also to Mitch Garver. Garver is the guy of all the players who are talked about in this DH spot. He's the guy who has the most upside. Like, without question, he just did it in 2023. He was a 130 WRC plus bat. Tellez has never done that in his entire career. Haniger hasn't done that since 2018? Like, maybe 2019. Like, it just, he hasn't been there, and you can't count on him anyways. And the other options are not great. Now, I understand, like, maybe early on you do it because I know you're going to be facing a handful of lefties in the first week or so. So you can, obviously Garver can DH against the lefties and catch a little bit against the lefties. So I think Garver will get time early. But I would like to see Garver get, 20 of the first 30 starts at the DH spot against righties and lefties. I want to see what I have there. And Garver's made an adjustment. It's worked so well. It's worked pretty well this spring so far. And so I want to see if that carries over to the regular season because, again, there's so much upside there. Like, Garver should be the opening day DH. Garver should play close to every day. And the way you do that is you DH him because obviously you're not taking Cal out of the lineup more than you need to. And, could Garver play first base? Sure. But, like, you going to take Luke Raley out of the lineup? Probably not. So you need to DH him. That's what I want to see. I would, honestly, Tellez would probably be my third option that I would like to see be the primary DH. I would rather see Garver and Solano ahead of Tellez be the primary DH, but it sure feels like we're rocketing towards some kind of true platoon split at DH, which is awesome because you also have a pure platoon at first base. Neat.
Yeah, those are two spots that you really just don't want to have platoons at.
Don't platoon there.
Because you're talking about a lot of guys that don't give you really any versatility whatsoever, don't provide really any sort of athleticism. You're using quite a few roster spots on just, frankly, bad bodies relative to, the average major leaguer, right?
Yeah, it just, like, if you're going to do that, like, can you pick one spot to do that in? Please? Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's one thing if it's second base or in a corner outfield spot where you're just like, whatever. But first base, DH, nah, those are, you want thumpers in those positions, not guys who are like, he's going up against a lefty. Ooh.
Yeah. So like, I'm fine with them having Garver earn it this year, but in order for him to earn it, you have to give him the opportunities. And again, to your point, he has the highest upside. Like, Yeah, I know we've kind of joked about the odd year Garver stuff, but in the odd years, we have seen what Mitch Garver can be, right? You see what the ceiling is for him when he's really getting it going. And that's a difference maker, right? That's not just a guy that helps. Like, that's a guy that changes the complexion of your lineup.
That's the guy who hits in the middle of one of the best offensive, teams we've seen in the last decade.
Yeah.
And a team that allows a team to win a World Series with that lineup.
Yeah.
That's the guy who hits 3, 4, 5 in that lineup. So yeah, I mean, again, he's done things that Tellez hasn't even come close to doing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would rather give Garver the shot than Tellez. But if I had to guess, I would say Tellez is probably opening day DH. And while that's not a huge deal, I think it's a mistake. I want Garver to be in there, like I said, 20 times in the first 30 days. I want him DHing. I got to see what I have.
All right, we are going to go over more of the things that we're going to be watching for in the first month of the season in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Just Ingredients and Monarch Money. When it comes to fueling your body, quality matters. That's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. Just Ingredients offers an NSF-certified line of protein powder, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine, all rigorously tested to ensure they're free from substances banned by major athletic organizations. Just Ingredients has also partnered with two-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their NSF-certified sports line to fuel his training and recovery. I love that Just Ingredients prioritizes wholesome, nourishing ingredients without the artificial junk. Visit justingredients.us and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off. And for more wellness tips, follow @just.ingredients on Instagram. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. So the next thing that we're watching out for is obviously how long is George Kirby going to be out, right? How many starts is Emerson Hancock going to make? Is it going to get to a point where maybe they consider Logan Evans pitching out of that spot? They have a bunch of off days in the first month of the season, so they could spread this out here where they maybe skip a couple of Hancock's scheduled starts, kind of run with essentially a 4-man rotation. I can't imagine they would, though, right? With how much they want to try and keep the other 4 guys fresh.
There's no avoiding the 5th spot in the first homestand, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You play 7 days straight, or 7 games straight. So yeah, he's gonna have to make that start. But then you do have the 3rd off on a Thursday. So right now Hancock would start on the 31st against Detroit. Then it would go, presumably, we don't know the entire rotation order, but we pretty much do. It would go Logan, Luis, and then you have the day off. And then you could go Miller, Wu, and Logan would still be on his normal rest that Sunday in San Francisco. So you could start that game. Right. And then it goes Castillo, Miller, Wu again. And then you have that day off. That's 4 days off. Then you could skip that start again. And then you have that Monday off. And then you have the following Monday off. Like, you probably don't want to do it every time, but could you do it once or twice? And now, by the way, for all we know, Gilbert's back by that second Thursday off, or Kirby's back by that second Thursday, and it doesn't matter. They could do it in San Francisco. Again, it's just like, do you want Hancock to skip San Francisco? It's not a terrifying lineup, but whatever. His
Yeah.
next start then would presumably come against Texas. Be at home, but it's still Texas.
Right.
And after that, he would start in Toronto. So I'm kind of hoping he's in the rotation that long, so you have to suffer like I do. So, yeah,
Hey,
not
man,
the
I had
easiest.
to watch Easton McGee start 2 years
And he
ago.
threw like a 7-inning one hitter.
I know. So what I'm saying is Emerson Hancock's going to have the start of his life in
What
Toronto.
I'm saying is Easton McGee is significantly better than Emerson Hancock.
We all know that's how you feel. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's not how I feel. That's just an undisputed fact. Look at the career numbers.
Right. Yeah. So I highly doubt that they're going to skip starts.
They should.
I think we'll see Hancock pitch every fifth day until Kirby's ready to go. Now, if Kirby's injury lingers and it's more serious than we think, then or it just takes him a little bit longer to ramp back up than we're expecting, then I think at a certain point, probably around the end of April, if that's as far as it goes, or if it's going to go beyond that, I think at that point you need to consider calling up Logan Evans, because the upside is just so much more immense than Hancock.
Yeah, the nice thing, the Mariners have a very helpful schedule early in regards to days off. So they play 7 games, they get Thursday off. Then they play 6 games, they get the next Thursday off. Then they play 3 games, they get that Monday off. They play 6 games, they get that Monday off. They play 6 games, they get that Monday off. They play 2 games, they get that Thursday off. They play 6 games, they get that Thursday off. They play 6 games, they get that next Thursday off. And it's not until the May 16th through the 25th that they play more than 7 games in a row.
Yeah.
So it's a very nice schedule in terms of just, managing your workload and all that stuff. So that's a benefit. Obviously you play Houston, Detroit owned you last year, Texas, Boston. So yeah, I mean, you play the Yankees pretty early on, San Diego. So yeah, it's not like the easiest schedule in terms of opponents, but it makes it a lot easier to manage bullpen and get guys back-to-back days off with them only missing 1 game, blah, blah, blah. So if you're looking for a benefit that the Mariners have early, it's that they have a day off pretty much 1 a week, sometimes 2 a week actually, but pretty much they have 1 day off a week for the first 7-8 weeks of the season. So they can do some creative things with their pitching staff.
Thinking about the rest of the staff, the one thing that I'm really interested to see is with Brian Wu, and see if he carries over what he's been doing this spring into the regular season. You all know the deal by now. It's a fastball heavy approach from Brian Wu. But this spring, we've actually seen him use the sweeper quite a bit. One of his starts, it was his most used pitch. A couple of other of his starts, it's been like the second most used pitch, kind of breaking up the 4-seam and the 2-seam. So I'm interested to see if we see more of like a mixed bag from Wu to start the year. Or if that's just going to be kind of like matchup dependent, as we kind of saw last year, where like he broke out the secondaries a bit more against the A's, for example, or if this is just who he is now and like he feels more comfortable throwing that sweeper and having that be a bigger part of his arsenal. Is there anything else in the rotation you're going to be watching out for?
It's pretty interesting. I didn't see anybody else talk about this, mostly because I don't care about other people's opinions, so I tend not to look for them, but Luis Castillo in his last start, he did a really good slider and a really good changeup, and he threw them a lot against lefties. Now, it was against the Padres, and there was like 3 major leaguers and the like. So whatever. Results don't really matter, but he had like a 60% whiff on the slider. He had like a 40% whiff on the changeup, and again, he was throwing them against lefties, and it was just it was different. It jumped out as this is different. And I went back and I looked, is this something he's did in his, all spring? No. In his last start prior to that, he was 50% fastball. Now, Luis last year was about 45% fastball, 4-seamer. And, it's still a good pitch, but I watched that and it was very effective and it was very interesting. I thought, is this just a day where he's like, I need to work on my off-speed stuff, so I'm going to throw it a lot today? Or is this maybe, as we get closer to opening day, kind of an attempt to throw a new wrinkle out there to kind of mix up the pitch usage a little bit, be a little bit more 33, 33, 33, with the pitches that work. The sinker is still terrible, by the way, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, if the changeup is good, if the slider was good, and again, the slider was really good against lefties in particular too. So, yeah, I'm watching that. I think it'd be interesting to see Luis, kind of morph more into what Logan Gilbert was last year, which is kind of the kitchen sink guy, which might help the fastball even more. But obviously, he has to have confidence in the slider and the changeup. So I'm interested to see if that carries over into the regular season, or if that was just simply a like, hey, I need to work on the slider and changeup today. So that's what I'm going to throw it a lot today, which starters do. Some Logan Gilbert a couple years ago had a start where he like only threw fastballs and sliders. Like that's what I want to work on today, and that's all he threw. So pitchers do that. So I would say that's more than likely what happened here in Luis's last start. It was just, I need to work on the changeup. I need to work on the slider. I'm going to do that today. But if it is, a tweak that gets made and a change that gets made, I think that could unlock something pretty important from Luis, and that's a viable way to get lefties out with consistency.
All right, we have a few more things to go over here in just a moment, but first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. So we haven't gotten to this yet, but we've talked about it a lot for the last couple of months. So obviously it's something that we're going to be watching out for in the first month of the regular season. It's third base. How does that play out? What does Jorge Polanco look like? Now, over the last week, Polanco's actually been hitting the ball pretty well. He got off to an 0 for in his first 4 or 5 games, but since then he's been tearing the cover off the ball for the most part. So we'll see if he's able to carry that into the regular season. But I don't think, and look, I don't want to put too much into spring training, but I don't think I ever saw Jorge Polanco look the way he has over the last few games at any point in 2024. So hopefully that's a sign that he does feel a bit more comfortable at the plate coming off of that surgery and all that. But again, the biggest question here is the defense. Only 180 career innings over at third base. What is this going to look like?
Yeah, that's always an interesting conversation, because he's already has 1 error, and I think he's only had 6 opportunities. So, there's going to be some bad moments. Like in April, there are going to be plays that aren't made. There's going to be, probably a wayward throw or two. There's going to be a short hop he doesn't handle correctly. He's probably going to get picked on a little bit with the bunt, although not that much because nobody bunts anymore, which is good. But it's going to be tricky, and I think obviously the hope for the Mariners is that we're going to downgrade substantially at third base defense, but we're going to upgrade substantially offensively. And so obviously if Polanco wasn't hitting right now, I think there'd be even more freak out. But because he's hitting, even though people love to remind themselves that spring training stats don't matter, they seem to put a lot of stock in them for things that don't matter. So, we'll see. But Polanco, I hope he's good. I really do. I mean, at the plate, I know he's not going to be good defensively.
No, basically, it's going to be bad. It's just how much of a disaster is it going to be? It's
is it a survivable disaster, or is it telling Ty France he could play second base for 150 games, that area of bad? Yeah. We'll find out. But But yeah, it's definitely a question mark. And also, how much does he play? Like, are they going to kind of ease him in a little bit? Like, I'm not saying he's going to.
How much workload is he able to handle in general?
Can he play like 7 games in 7 days right now? Because I would think it's kind of one of those things where it's like, look, the more reps we get him early, you hope that pays off at the end of the year because he's just a little bit better. But it's like, can he physically handle it? Can he? Have we seen Polanco play 3 days in a row yet this spring? Now, to be fair, I don't know if we've seen anybody play 3 days in a row.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's played 3 days in a row.
So I think they should probably go ahead and do that this week. So I don't know. Can he do that right now? Tough to say. We don't know. We just don't know because he's coming off of the knee surgery. It's something to be concerned about. Obviously, it's probably going to limit his range even more. But the fact that he's hitting a little bit right now, the swing looks good. That's a good sign. But until you see it in the regular season, just a massive question mark. So third base continues for me to be the most concerning position on the field, bar none. Like, it is the one position I have no idea what to expect from. And I'm afraid it might be an absolute disaster. But I will acknowledge there's definitely the potential that it's totally fun. Polanco hits. That
at the very least, the offensive production outweighs how much of a disaster the defense is.
Like, is it possible that Polanco is, by the end of the year, fringe average at third base? Maybe.
I have a hard time seeing it, but sure.
Could Polanco be like a 120 WRC plus guy like he basically has been every year of his career except for last year? If he does that, as long as the defense isn't just complete disaster, you're going to be fine there. And that's definitely a possibility. So it's just, if he's a 100 WRC plus guy, like, the defense has to be a lot better than we think it is for that to be, a solid spot for him. But yeah, Polanco, third base in general, that's the biggest question. And that's the one that I'm hoping we get answers to pretty quick in 2025 because I think you got to be, it's tough because you say, like, you have to be really quick to make that decision, but also you just don't have that many options other than Polanco.
Yeah.
Like,
at the very least, Ryan Bliss has seemingly won the second base spot. So now you have Dylan Moore freed up to maybe be a late game defensive replacement at third, or just take some of the load off of Polo over at third. Yeah. You'll have it seems like Master Boney is probably going to make the roster, so he could be a late game defensive replacement as well.
Yeah.
But
I feel like I'm going to close my eyes every time there's a right-handed hitter in the box, and I'm just sitting there like, oh, please, 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 hit it in the air, hit it in the air. But I really hope Polo is very good at the plate because he's a fun dude to root for and all that. And he seems like a really good dude, and I still think he can hit. I don't think he just fell off a cliff.
Fact that he chose to come back, and I get it, they offered more money than the Astros and the Yankees did, whatever. But the fact that he chose to come back in a very important year for him, where, look, if things go sideways again for him, he's probably looking at a minor league contract next year. Right? He's probably going to be a spring training invitee trying to fight to make a roster. He chose to rebuild his value playing half of his games at T-Mobile Park. I want him to succeed just for that fact alone. The bet that he's taken on himself, how risky that is. Like, I like it. Like, I hope he succeeds.
I think now that we've seen Bliss, and I know people are freaking out about Dylan Moore. Like, people are freaking out about Dylan Moore being 1 for 30, but Jorge being 6 for 20 is like the best thing ever. Interesting. So yeah, but I do feel like second base is more settled. I don't love it, obviously, but like, whatever. It is.
By the way, I think the writing is on the wall today. They have Bliss playing at second and Demo at shortstop.
Yeah, it does seem like Bliss is starting to start there more and more and more and more. And
yeah, he's been with like the A team. Like, look at what was it, Saturday when they had the split squad? Bliss was with the A team. Demo was with the backups in the AAA depth, and he wasn't even playing second that day either.
Yeah,
so
it feels to me like the Mariners are going to give Bliss first crack at that job. And again, because we're going to see at least 2 lefties in the first 4 games, Dylan Moore is going to play early. Like, he's not going to just ride the bench for 4 days. It's not going to happen.
And we're going to see him at second base a lot too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Like, it might be like a 60-40 thing at second base. And then it's just that on the 60% of the games where Demo's not playing second base, it frees you up to use him or not use him in any way you see fit, which is a nice little bonus. And, Dan Wilson didn't come out and say that Bliss is the second baseman, but he did talk about how he's been on a nice run and, they've got like 7 games in the next 7 days and Ryan's going to play a lot. So it does kind of feel like they've made that decision that Bliss is going to be the second baseman, at least to start.
Yeah. So lastly, any thoughts on the bullpen? I mean, we're kind of waiting to see how the back end shakes out. There's the possibility that they might flip one of these guys for some bench help before they break camp. But Munoz is the guy. Do you think that they're going to get as aggressive with Munoz as they did at the start of last year?
No.
Because of Santos being there.
Because of Santos.
They also have Snyder. Yeah.
Yep.
Inspire. Yep.
I'd be shocked if there was a 4-out save opportunity in the month of April for Munoz. I just don't think they're going to do it. So, and then obviously you hope they get Brash back by the end of the month. But the bullpen's really interesting because if they do get Brash back by the end of the month, Taylor is going to start the year on the IL. That was announced today by Divish. But they think he'll be back mid-April. Like it's only going to be a couple weeks. And the Mariners only have 3 guys in their projected bullpen right now that have an option left. So you're going to have to produce right away if you're in this Mariners bullpen. If you have a couple stumbles here early, you're probably losing your job. And if you're not, if you're not Santos or Saucedo or Legumina, you're headed out on the waiver wire. You're not going to AAA. You're going out on the waiver wire. So, you kind of have to figure this thing out pretty quick. But, it does feel like the bullpen is locked in. And I do think that they are going to be really, I think they're going to try and, I don't know if force is the right word, but they're going to try and get Santos and Spire in these high leverage spots pretty often early would be my guess, because Spire's had a good spring. He had the one blow up outing, but he's had a good spring. Santos, little hit and miss, but I think they need to find another high leverage option. And I think they're willing to take a couple shots early in the year where they won't ask Munoz to go get 4 outs. Now Munoz still might pitch the 8th, and they might have Santos or Spire try to be the closer. But I don't think they're going to get a 5-out opportunity like they did in game 2 last year.
Yeah. Well, and on that as well, Dan's a pretty traditional guy. Do you think that we'd see him just deploy Munoz as the closer no matter what the situation is? Like he's the 9th inning guy?
No.
Even if the middle of the order comes up in the 8th, you think he'll at least use Munoz in the highest leverage spots, right?
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I doubt he uses them in the 6th, even if he should.
Right. Yeah.
7th, 8th, 9th, I think if the Mariners really wanted to turn overall decision power to Dan Wilson and embrace that old school philosophy, Manny Acta wouldn't be here. They wouldn't have brought in, basically built Dan's staff for him. They wouldn't have done that. So I do think that it's still going to be a collaborative effort like it was with Scott Service. And I think one thing the Mariners have been very consistent about is that Munoz is the guy you use when the game's on the line, regardless of if it's the 9th or not. So it's the reason Munoz has 30 career saves in 3 years. He's just not pitching. He's just not pitching the 9th all that often. So, I think the bullpen usage will be situationally very similar to last year, but I don't think you're going to see Munoz be asked, or any reliever really, asked to go more than 3 outs per outing, unless obviously there's going to be extreme circumstances where probably Hancock goes 3 2/3 and you have to cover 2 innings. They'll probably ask Saucedo or Thornton to do that, but no, any of the leverage guys, I'd be pretty surprised they were asked to get more than 3 outs in the month of April.
That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.